Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about an unsolved murder case that scares me very deeply and actually touches on some of my own worst fears, hence why I'm a little bit shaky right now. It really creeps me out. This might be the beginning of an unsolved series. If that's something that interests you, you can let me know in the comments down below. But before we get into the video, I did want to thank today's sponsor, which is Shudder. AMC Network's Shudder is a premium streaming video service super serving fans of all degrees with the best selection of horror and thrillers. The cool thing about Shudder is that there's a community filled with reviews and even member-only perks such as exclusive releases and VIP movie screenings. You can stream great thrillers, horror, and suspense for $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year, and on all of your favorite devices such as Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Xbox One, iOS, and Android. Shudder has a unique, human-curated collection of exclusive and original films and series. To try Shudder for free for 30 days, go to shudder.com and use promo code READYTOGLARE. One specific film I recommend is a Shudder original titled Scare Me. It's a horror comedy, so it's great for when you want something creepy but not heavy. The story centers around two strangers in a cabin during a power outage. They begin to tell stories to try and scare each other, but the stories begin to come true. I highly recommend it. Thank you again to Shudder for sponsoring this video, and remember to try Shudder for free for 30 days. Go to shudder.com and use promo code READYTOGLARE. Let's get into this story. I also want to thank my husband because he wrote the script for it. For many of us, our homes are our sanctuary where we can disentangle ourselves from the outside world and take care of ourselves both mentally and physically. When that sanctity is violated, it can leave one with an unsettling sense of fear and vulnerability, and in some cases, crippling paranoia. It is even more disturbing if our worst suspicions come true with deadly consequences. This is a true and gruesome story in which a series of suspect occurrences rattled a family, their maid, and only when it was too late were their worst fears realized. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders and the occurrences leading up to the horrific murders of the Gruber family and their maid. While many of the details surrounding this case are shrouded in mystery, including the who and why, what is known is chilling to the bone. This story starts at the Hinterkaifeck farmstead about 43 miles north of Munich in a wooden region near the city of Grobern, Germany in the year of 1922, making this unresolved mystery nearly a century old. As you can imagine, details of such events wither away with time and fade as each year is passed with no resolution, but tales such as this one are never really forgotten for the horrors that were committed to the occupants of the farm, leaving a stain on the history surrounding the area. Keep in mind, during this time, this was a rural area with little crime, and for something like this to happen there was unprecedented, which is so often heard about with small-town murders. Perhaps this is why the events leading up to the murders were not taken as seriously as they should have. Before getting into the events leading up to the murders, it is important to start where the murder case starts, the discovery of the murdered family and their maid. The farmstead was occupied by Andreas Gruber and Casilia Gruber, their daughter Victoria, and her two children, 7-year-old daughter Casilia, named after her grandmother, and 2-year-old son Joseph, along with a newly hired maid, Maria Baumgartner. This family was known for being very private, but well known in the community locally. So when granddaughter Casilia had not shown up for school for 2 days in a row, the townspeople grew concerned and decided to check on the farmstead. What they found would plague the community with rumors and speculation on who could do such a thing. The grisly massacre of the family took place on March 31st, 1922, while the discovery occurred on April 4th. 4 bodies were found in the barn. All of the victims were found to be viciously bludgeoned and bloodied. Husband and wife, Andreas and Casilia's autopsy revealed that they may have also been strangled after suffering blows to the head. Other reports say they died instantly as the blows to the head they endured were that severe. Victoria, their daughter, suffered 9 star-shaped lacerations to the face and head. It is likely she was not conscious for most of those blows. The truly traumatic and heartbreaking murder in the barn was that of the 7-year-old granddaughter Casilia. Much like the others, she was bludgeoned, suffering deep rounded wounds and a broken jaw. Evidence suggests that the child survived the initial attack. For hours, she endured the pain and suffering inflicted upon her with clumps of her hair missing. It is suggested by investigators that in a state of shock, she may have ripped the hair out herself. Unfortunately, the bodies of Maria Baumgartner and the young son Joseph were found in the house murdered by blows to the head with a blunt object, as well as Joseph suffering a singular, cruel blow to the face. In a harsh twist of fate, it is discovered it was the maid's first day on the job and her last day to be among the living. It is noted that all bodies were covered, implicating that the person or persons who committed the murder may have known the victims and could not endure looking at the victims after what they have done. Experts suggest that the murder weapon was a mattock, a pickaxe tool. Investigators went to work to try and solve the crime. Initially, they suggested this could have been done by nomadic men that had been quickly disregarded, as by what they discovered suggests something far more disturbing. As the investigators began to question the local community, they learned of strange happenings and reports around the farm as early as 6 months before the discovery of the murder. The earliest incident was recounted by a former maid that had been working on the farm. She quit as she claimed the house was haunted. The maid would say she always felt watched and heard constant footsteps and other sounds, including voices coming from the attic above. Naturally, Andreas Gruber rejected the idea of a haunting, but he did acknowledge the maid's complaints to other townspeople. Things continued as normal for the Gruber family, at least for a while, but strange things around the farm kept happening. It was reported that Andreas saw a shadow or a silhouette of a man in the woods around the perimeter of the farm, ever watchful. The figure did not linger long, and Andreas, while slightly more on edge, did not seem too concerned after he conducted a search of the farm for the man but found nothing. Unfortunately, things began to escalate in the house and for the Gruber family, and eventually Andreas could not deny that he too was hearing sounds from the attic, including the sound of footsteps and a set of missing keys. The keys belonged to the tool shed, likely where the murder weapon had been stored. This was reported by neighbors, and they seemed to suggest it was more of a nuisance for Andreas rather than a legitimate concern. About a week or so before the murders, Andreas finally admitted to even more peculiar events occurring around the farm. He reported seeing footsteps leading to the house from the woods. However, no footsteps were discovered to suggest a return trip back into the woods. These footsteps went one way. As if this were not enough to concern the Gruber family, it was also told that he discovered a newspaper in his home that he claimed he had not purchased himself. Regrettably, while these incidents were not ignored, they were not heeded as the warnings they represented when you consider what was to become of the occupants of the farm. It appears they had a constant visitor, or maybe even an uninvited guest, living in their home, waiting, watching, planning. Considering the time, evidence based on science was not an option. Many of the people interviewed to find out who murdered the family and maid to no avail. There were, however, a few suspects. As stated before, the bodies were covered, and considering the brutal nature of the murders, it felt personal, and investigators feel this was someone who knew the family. One such suspect was the alleged father of Victoria's son, Joseph, as her previous husband had died in the World War. He was the main person of interest, many claimed. His name was Lawrence Schlittenbauer. It is rumored that Andreas broke up the relationship of Victoria and Lawrence at some point, and he married someone else. Lawrence and his new wife had lost a child in infancy, and it was suggested this traumatic event had drove him to commit these gruesome murders. This, along with his knowledge and know-how around the farm, made him a suspect. Additionally, he displayed what was described as odd behavior when helping to handle the bodies. He did not seem squeamish or to care at all. Eventually, investigators brushed it off as shock, and the theory was never confirmed. One such suspect suggests a more terrible theory. That is that Andreas Gruber was the murderer. It is said that Andreas had a proclivity for incest and abuse towards his family. People have gone far enough to suggest that Joseph could have even been a product of such incest, and why he was keen to break up the relationship between Lawrence and his daughter, Victoria. This information is unconfirmed, and considering the nature of his own death, the theory was brushed aside. Desperate and exasperated, the police removed the heads of the family's members and maid and sent it to so-called psychics in Munich to acquire more clues. Of course, this was a misguided attempt that led to naught but dismay. Even worse, the heads of the victims were lost during the Second World War, never to be recovered. The case seems to be re-examined by investigators from time to time, but nothing ever comes of the reviews. The case remains unsolved, while the Gruber family, their maid Maria, are buried headless and without justice. This is a cautionary tale for some and a tragedy for all. Many ponder why the incidents were not taken as seriously as they should have, and why, if sounds were heard from the attic, was it not explored for a sign of an unwelcome visitor? Maybe the family and maid would still be alive if they had. While there is hope, this will get solved. The truth is, we may never know the truth behind the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders. So, needless to say, this story is extremely alarming because aside from being obviously tragic, if you guys follow me, you know that I have a very intense fear and anxiety in terms of home invasion. I have nightmares about it all the time. So this story makes me have heart palpitations every time I think about it, and it's just so crazy to me that the family never really investigated to see if someone was in the house apart from that one time that was mentioned. I'm just mad that nobody found out who the murderer or murderers were, and frankly I just hope it wasn't a family member because I feel like that would make it even more tragic. The idea also that they send the heads to psychics is such a weird extra additional aspect of the story that makes it so surreal sounding. Like it sounds like a story rather than something that really happened, which is why I think it's so interesting. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you do want to see more videos of unsolved cases, let me know. If you want to recommend some, go ahead. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and let's